Harvester Christian Church, welcome to Christmas at the Movies. Now, I gotta be honest with you, I'm not used to preaching from the big screen, and you're not used to seeing this face this big. But I can't wait to see what God does with this 4-week series. My hope is that we explore these familiar stories and you simultaneously encounter the truth of Jesus. Now, Jesus was a master storyteller. He would often use stories to make a point. Now, he didn't use movies. Hollywood wasn't around back then. I think we can thank God for that, right? But what he did do was tell parables. Parables were stories that individuals could easily relate to. And then Jesus would bridge that story to a new truth. And that's my hope for Christmas at the Movies, that we can use stories that we're familiar with and then bridge them to the truth of Jesus. And today, I want to start with a story in the movie called Wonka. Now, full disclosure, I have a love-hate relationship with the Wonka series. The original one was amazing. Johnny Depp starred in the next one, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and it was interesting, but when that one came out, my phone started blowing up with texts. And still, to this day, anytime a friend of mine watches Johnny Depp's Wonka movie, they text me this picture, and they say, "I didn't know you were an actor." Supposedly, I look just like the guy on the left, Mr. Buckets. What do you think? Yeah, me either. Now, who I wish I looked like was this guy. Timothy Chalamet stars in the latest Wonka movie, a prequel. It's the story how Wonka became Wonka. The story follows the young, ambitious Wonka as he sets out to achieve his big dreams. He desires to become the best chocolatier this world has ever seen. And along his way, his dreams face many challenges and setbacks. The community challenges his dreams. They're challenged by a chocolate cartel. His dreams are challenged by Oompa Loompas. There are financial setbacks and even friendship setbacks. That's a story that I think we can all relate to, isn't it? I mean, show of hands, who here is willing to admit that life hasn't gone how you thought it would go? How many of you are facing a setback right now? Maybe it's a career setback, or maybe it's a calling setback. Maybe it's a relationship or your religious beliefs. Whatever it is, you sensed God was calling you to something, and whatever it is, it's just not going how you thought it would go. You're not alone. We've all been there. Friends, here's the truth. Setbacks are certain. Jesus tells us precisely that. He's upfront with us and he tells us in this life, we will face troubles. Here's the reality of life. It's hard. You're gonna mess up. Someone else is gonna mess up and it's gonna impact you. Your dreams will not come easy. And once you overcome one obstacle, another is going to come. Setbacks are certain. Wonka discovered that to be true as well. After years of work perfecting his chocolate, he's ready to go public. He gathers a crowd around, introduces them to his first taste of Wonka chocolate, but not everyone is as excited as he is.
Well, there's chocolate, and there's chocolate, but only Wonka's makes your eyes pop out. There's chocolates. Put your hand into your pocket, get yourself some Wonka chocolate. Come now, I insist. You've never had chocolate like this. No, you've never had chocolate like this.
Thank you.
Miss Bonbon,
Yes, Mr. Slugworth.
call the police.
Very good, sir.
Well, who wants to try one? I will. Mr. Slugworth, sir.
Excuse me.
Mr. Fickelgruber. And Mr. Prodnose. What an honor. Ever since I was a little boy. That is quite a handshake.
It's a business handshake, Mr. Wonka. Lets people know I mean business. Now, come along. Let's try one of these so-called hover chunks. Ooh, it's not just chocolate, is it? There's marshmallow
That's right. Harvested from the mallow marshes of Peru.
and caramel. But it's
Salted. With the bittersweet tears of a Russian clown.
is it? Surely not. Cherry.
Cherry picked by the pick of the cherry pickers from the Imperial Gardens in Japan.
Well, Mr. Wonka, I've been in this business a very long time, and I can safely say that of all the chocolate I have ever tasted, this is without doubt The absolute 100% worst.
Woo! There we have it, ladies and gentlemen. An endorsement from Wait, the worst?
Wonka experienced a timeless truth that the scriptures clearly lay out. Whatever your hopes and dreams are, setbacks are certain. Moses, he's a great example of this. Moses was someone destined for greatness. He was a Hebrew slave boy in Egypt at a time when Hebrew slave boys were being put to death. But by the providence of God, he escaped the massacre. He grew up in Pharaoh's court as a prince, having access to all of the power and the privilege that Egypt offered. He became a strong, confident man who desired justice for his oppressed people. And he had a dream of freeing the Hebrews from Egypt. But when he took things into his own hands, he faced a huge setback, a setback brought on by his own character. Exodus chapter 2, starting with verse 11, it says this: Many years later, when Moses had grown up, he went out to visit his own people, the Hebrews, and he saw how hard they were forced to work. During his visit, he saw an Egyptian beating one of his fellow Hebrews. After looking in all directions to make sure no one was watching, Moses killed the Egyptian and hid the body in the sand. The next day, when Moses went out to visit his people again, he saw two Hebrew men fighting. "Why are you beating up our friend?" Moses said to the one who had started the fight. The man replied, "Who appointed you to be our prince and judge? Are you going to kill me as you killed that Egyptian yesterday?" Then Moses was afraid, thinking, "Everyone knows what I did." And sure enough, Pharaoh heard what had happened, and he tried to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in the land of Midian. When Moses arrived in Midian, he sat down beside a well. Moses went on the run, and he remained in exile for 40 years. For 40 years, his dreams were put on hold. Talk about a setback. How are you going to save your people when now you're running for your own life? Setbacks are certain. They were certain for Wonka, and they're certain for Moses, and they're certain for you as well. Now, the question is not, will setbacks come, but how will you respond when they inevitably do come? Not only are setbacks certain, but if you're gonna move forward, here's the second thing that should happen. Setbacks spark reflection. If you're gonna go through a setback, the least you can do is make the most of it, right? Maybe it's worth thinking of setbacks as invitations to evaluate, an invitation to make adjustments. In fact, if you're facing a setback right now, there are 3 reflections worth having. And the first thing we need to do is be accountable and ask this question: am I the problem? Whatever the setback happens to be, before we evaluate others, we should always start by evaluating ourselves. Now, this is hard to do. Most of the time, we assume that people are the problem, that other people are the problem. And sometimes that's true, but sometimes it's not. It's worth asking ourselves, did I miss something? Did I think too highly of myself? Did I try to do this on my own power? Did I listen to wise counsel? Did I listen to God? If you're in a relationship that's falling apart, a career that's not taking off, or nobody seems to be taking you seriously, it's worth asking, am I giving my all? Am I sending the wrong message? Is there something in my attitude or my action or my character that I'm blind to? Maybe, maybe not, but it's definitely worth asking. And you know, that's exactly what Moses did. After 40 years of exile, Moses had plenty of time to reflect. So much so that when God calls him back to the task of freeing the Hebrew slaves, Moses is much more humble now. God tells Moses that he's heard the cries of the Hebrew and he's ready to free them. And of all the people to do it, God's chosen Moses to be the leader of this revolution. God says this to Moses in Exodus chapter 3, starting with verse 9. "Look, the cry of the people of Israel has reached me, and I've seen how harshly the Egyptians abuse them. Now go, for I'm sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people, Israel, out of Egypt." Wow, what an honor to be chosen by God. Moses is being sent on this grand mission. Now, young Moses would have relished this opportunity, but now, 40 years later, we see a much more reflective Moses respond when he says this: "Who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt?" God answered, "I will be with you, and this is your sign that I am the one who has sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God at this very mountain. Who am I? That's self-reflection right there. Moses realized a lot about himself. When he was younger, he was willing to take things into his own hand, even kill if he had to. But now, as a more reflective person, he realizes that he's not the superhero he once thought he was. So he responds to God, "Who am I? Who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead your people?" And because of this attitude, power shifts from Moses' hands to God's hands. And God tells him, "Yes, that's exactly what I want to see in you. Now we can do this together. And someday, at this very mountain, together, we will celebrate that victory. Not your victory, but our victory." Church, if you're facing a setback right now, would you stop and consider this? It's okay to not be the hero. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to let God know that you can't do it alone. He's ready and willing to join you. A second thing we need to do during setbacks is this: to make adjustments and ask, am I willing to change the plan? Now, is there anyone who's like me and you're just hard-headed? I gotta be honest with you. I hate changing my plans. And the reason I'm doing what I'm doing typically is because I put a lot of work into figuring out how to do it this way. And when I find out it doesn't work, I have difficulty shifting gears. I tend to stick to my guns and fight for my cause and never let them see me sweat. And if all else fails, well, it usually does. And because of that, I'm learning to be more nimble in life, to listen to others, and to adjust my plans because of it. What if we viewed setbacks like a halftime, not the end of the game? If a setback is only halftime, you can adjust and get back out there for the second half. And you know, that's exactly what Willy Wonka does in this movie. After these setbacks, the chocolate cartel succeeds in ridding their town of Wonka and sending him off to exile on a ship. And while he's sulking about this setback, an Oompa Loompa shows up in the midst of a breakthrough.
Oompa Loompa Loompa Diddy, I'm not in premium economy. I'd go first class if I were you. That's what Oompa Loompas do.
So glad you're here.
Oh, I'm not going to let you out of my sight, Willy Wonka. Not till you've paid your debt. But I bring glad tidings on that score.
What's that?
I've been doing my sums. One more jar, and we're even. Or, if you prefer, I will accept half a jar of those rather amusing hoverchicks.
You're out of luck. I don't make chocolate anymore.
Oh dear, please don't tell me you're going to go through with this ridiculous deal.
I have to. For Noodle. I promised her a better life. And Pinky promised.
You should stand up to those bullies. Give them the old 1-2. That's what an Oompa Loompa would do. But if you are determined to just sit there feeling sorry for yourself, I am going flat. Good night, sir.
Huh.
What is it?
No, nothing.
Well, it's obviously something, because you said, huh.
I'm sorry. Forget it.
Very well.
Huh.
Ah, you did it again. Tell me what it is, or I shall poke you quite viciously with a cocktail stick.
Look, where Slugworth shook my hand. His ring left a mark. See? It's an A, surrounded by S's.
So what? His name is Arthur Slugworth. It's probably a family ring.
Yes, but Noodle has one just like it.
Noodle?
Uh-huh.
Why would Noodle the orphan have a Slugworth family ring?
There's only one reason I can think of.
Which is?
And if I'm correct, Noodle could be in grave danger.
Well, come on, Wonka, spit it out. Produce your owl pellet of wisdom.
There's no time. I gotta get back.
Captain!
Wonka!
Often, after a setback comes, there's this moment of clarity that can lead us to a willingness to step out in faith. And that's the third thing I tell you to do after a setback. Persevere in faith. And ask this question: am I willing to step out in faith? That's not just Wonka, that's Moses' story as well. After Moses' earlier setbacks, Moses accepts God's call to lead the Hebrew people out of slavery. And you know what happens next? Moses goes to Pharaoh, and what does he say? Pharaoh, Pharaoh, oh baby, Yeah, he says, let my people go. And you know the story. Pharaoh refuses, and then Pharaoh's hit with a plague. So he decides to let them go and immediately changes his mind. So God and Moses hit him with another plague. And this doesn't just happen one time, but it happens over and over. It happens 9 times. There's the plague of blood, frogs, gnats, flies, livestock, boils, the plague of hail, locusts, and darkness. And each time, Pharaoh chooses to release the slaves, and then he changes his mind. But what I'm more impressed with is Moses' decision to persevere anyway. After 9 setbacks, Moses keeps stepping out in faith, putting his own neck on the line, and then finally, after the 10th plague, the death of firstborns, Moses sees his dreams of freeing the Hebrew slaves become a reality. Some of you, you're one day away from seeing God deliver you from a setback. Persevere in your relationships. Persevere with your dreams. Keep working hard. Keep praying. Keep seeking wise counsel. Ask, seek, knock, and then keep asking, keep seeking, and keep knocking, and watch what Jesus can do. You will possibly see what Moses found out, that setbacks lead to comebacks. And not just comebacks, but setbacks are often the pathway to experiencing God's grace. We see his power most often when our power fails. We see how he perseveres and displays his power even when we're weak. After the Hebrews escaped through the Red Sea, we're told that the victory was God's victory, but Moses was included in the win. In Exodus chapter 14, it says it this way: "That is how the Lord rescued Israel from the hand of the Egyptians that day. When the people of Israel saw the mighty power that the Lord had unleashed against the Egyptians, they were filled with awe before him. They put their faith in the Lord and in his servant Moses." Moses' greatest comeback came at the Red Sea when it wasn't Moses who proved to be powerful, but God who proved to be powerful. Imagine what God could do if you persevered and invited him into your plans. After setbacks, Wonka caught a new vision, a vision for a comeback. And the vision was bigger than just a simple storefront, but a whole kingdom of chocolate.
It's a shame you have to go.
I said good day.
If I'm gonna share my chocolate with the world, I'm gonna need more than a shop.
I'm sure you will.
I'm gonna need a factory.
Well, good luck with that.
And someone to head up the tasting department.
The tasting department.
Come with me.
All right.
And you'll be
Where?
in a world of pure imagination.
It's a ruined castle.
Take a look and you'll see into your imagination.
Frankly, I rather doubt it.
We'll begin with a spin, traveling in the world of my creation. What we'll see will defy explanation.
Does defy explanation.
If you want to view paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to do it. Want to change the world, there's nothing to it.
Not bad.
There is no life I know to compare with pure imagination. Living there, you'll be free if you truly wish to be.
Whatever setbacks you're facing today, remember this. Just like Moses, just like Wonka, God can use your setbacks to craft a comeback, one that reveals his grace and strength through your weaknesses. I know it's hard to imagine that God can turn it around, especially when you're in the thick of it. But here's my prayer for you this Christmas season, that you would look to God again. For some of you, it's been a long time since you've brought your problems, your pains, your setbacks to God, really brought them to God. Instead, you've chosen the easy path of, I'll handle it myself. Can I be honest with you? Without God, you're going to experience more setbacks. The weight of the world wasn't meant to be carried on your shoulders alone. But what if this Christmas season, your setbacks could lead to a comeback? What if this Christmas, You invited Jesus into that very setback. Because let me tell you something about Jesus. He's the king of comebacks. After facing the greatest setback of all, death on a cross, he made the greatest comeback of all when he rose from the dead 3 days later. And because he did, he has the power to turn your setbacks into comebacks too. Friend, it's possible, but it's only possible when you invite him in. So this Christmas season, would you give Jesus a second chance to enter your story? Because when you do, he will give you one too. Setbacks are inevitable, but they are not the end of the story. They can lead to breakthroughs if we're willing to reflect, adjust, and then step out in faith. Willy Wonka had to face his setbacks before he could find success. Moses had to face his failures before he could fulfill his calling. And you, whatever setback you're facing right now, know this: God's not done yet. Don't give up. Take a step of faith and trust that he's working, even in the midst of your setbacks. As we close, I want to leave you with Jesus' words in John chapter 16, verse 33. In this world, you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. Jesus has already won the victory, and through him, you can overcome any setback you face.